Welcome, everyone, to the Traveling Pilates Teacher podcast. I'm Kristie Klein, and my guest today, it's just me. I wanted to answer some of the questions that I ask my guests so you as the listeners can hear and hopefully understand my point of view better. I'm going to start off by giving you a little bit of background about me. I'm a mom of 2 grown sons and happily divorced. I've had an interesting career path. I started out in advertising right out of college, then got my master's in teaching and taught 2nd and 4th grade in the classroom. I left that career to transition into the corporate world and took on roles in learning and development. Couldn't handle one more minute of the corporate world and decided I needed a drastic change. So while I was teaching in the corporate world, I started working on my Pilates teaching certificate. And as soon as I left that corporate world, I transitioned to starting teaching Pilates full time. I really have enjoyed each opportunity that I've had, and each has left me with connections that I've made with coworkers who have really turned into lifelong friends. So really, everything happens for a reason and regret nothing. But let's switch now to my Pilates journey. Really, I was introduced to Pilates over 20 years ago, really by default. When my son was first born, I was taking classes at a local gym to kind of shed that baby weight. And they offered mat Pilates, and I tried it, and I was hooked. I loved it. I remember it being offered on a Friday morning. That's how much of an impact it had on me, that over 20 years ago, I can remember what day of the week it was. Don't remember the time, but I remember it was in the morning. And I always looked forward to that class. I just felt like it was intense, but I always felt like I got that good workout, and it wasn't like the other classes that were offered. Those other classes, they moved faster, and I had to really focus to make sure I was keeping up and wasn't going left when everybody was going right, and it was super intense, and it always left me exhausted and sore, and this mat class was different. I still got that workout, but just didn't have those same feelings. And so I tried to take mat Pilates, through the years, as many classes as I could find. And then you fast forward 20 years, and now here I'm at getting divorced, and I've moved to a new city, and I'm living alone, and I'm dating again. And, that hasn't happened since I was a teenager. And good God, I needed to get into shape for that. So I found this offer from a Pilates club where I moved to, and they were offering a free Pilates class through Facebook. So I went, and the moment I started, I remembered how much I love Pilates, and it really worked for me. So took this little free class, signed up that day, and honestly never looked back. The only negative was it was pretty expensive, and anybody that's gone through a divorce, especially in the States, realizes that it's pretty expensive to get a divorce. So, and I don't know about other countries, because obviously I've only gotten divorced in the state of Illinois and the country of the U.S., so I don't know, can't speak for other states. But again, it's pretty costly. So I really had to look at my finances and where could I cut back. And Pilates was definitely a need, but it was definitely a more want than that need. And really struggled with having to let that go. But ironically, I'm a true believer in everything happens for a reason. And the studio that I was working out at was also looking for somebody to help at the desk. So I put 2 and 2 together, applied, got the job, and it was really a win-win for both of us. So I did that desk thing for a while, and I really got to know the instructors pretty well. I got to know the clients really well, and was also able to work out for free, which really worked for me. So I really, when I was starting to learn and get to know these instructors really well, I learned that they all loved what they were doing, and most of them did it as a full-time job. My mind started thinking, they love it. It's profitable enough to do it full-time. I'm miserable in this corporate job. Why am I not making this move as to become an instructor? And I remember talking to my manager at the studio at the time, and they were talking about teacher training, and it's coming up, this weekend, and literally something took over my body and my brain, and the words fell out of my mouth. I want to sign up for teacher training. And I did that day, and literally signed up on a Thursday night, and the next day had to be into teacher training. And it was all weekend long, and My body, I don't think, was ready for it, and neither really was my brain, but it was the best decision and the best brain body takeover that I think I've ever had, because I've never looked back and I've loved every minute of it. Now, I will say that teacher training, especially in the States, probably around the world too, but again, I don't know because I've only done the US teacher training, but it is no joke. It is long, it's intense. You have to have some serious grit to get through that process. In my cohort, we started out with 12 people. One dropped out immediately, so that dropped us down to 11. And then the 11 did get through all of the in-studio work together, but we all still keep in touch. And actually, some of them have really become really close friends of mine. And 2 of them never really completed their certificates, and I'm not sure if they ever will, but that dropped down to 9, which are still good numbers to have, 9 out of 12, but it just takes that serious time and effort to complete, and just life happens and they just don't get to do it. But after a year and leaving a job that I was miserable in, I did take the plunge and became a Pilates teacher full time. And again, I have not looked back since. I love that I make my own schedule, and I do, if I need a day off for myself, I take it. No one cares, and no one calls me. No one's sending me pings on Teams. I'm not getting emails. I don't have another work phone that I have to constantly keep on. The day that I take off is my day. Plus, I get to do a job that I'm passionate about every single day, which can't beat that, right? So now that you know how I became a Pilates teacher, just a little bit more about the why and talk about my teaching style. Again, because I worked at the Pilates studio prior to being a teacher, I always grabbed ideas and little bits, pieces from other teachers that I admired. And so, of course, I've put together my own style, but I've also learned from others as well. And I think that helps make my style. My style really does reflect my personality. I do truly love people. I love talking to people, hence why I have my own podcast. I love hearing their stories. I really love getting to know them. So in my classes, I really enjoy getting to know my clients. Like, how long have you been doing Pilates? Maybe what hurts today? What positions do you really love to do? Maybe there's some that you really don't like. I also do like to get to know them on that personal level. Are they married? If so, how long? Do you have children? What's your career? Whatever it is to take to get to know somebody. And really, before and after class, you're going to always find me talking to at least someone or even a small group of people. I do, in the beginning of each class, if I see a new student, I always try to spend a few minutes with them if I can. If they arrive a few minutes early, it's a lot easier. I like to make them feel welcomed and comfortable. It's always intimidating being the new kid, especially if you've never done Pilates before and you sit down on that machine for that first time. It can be rather intimidating. So I really like to make those new people feel welcome and get rid of that intimidation a little bit. So really my teaching style it's really casual. I like to think that it's welcoming. I like to think that it's a positive style. I usually will make some kind of, silly comment in the beginning to lighten the mood. I always talk about my love of chocolate, my love of pizza, my love of white wine. I always just kind of lighten the mood because really it's Pilates. Yes, we love it. Yes, it is serious, but we're not performing brain surgery here. We're here to have a good time for an hour or 45 minutes, however long the class is. And let's just do the best that we can to enjoy ourselves. And I also love to acknowledge the whole class and how wonderful they're doing, especially if we're doing a little bit of a difficult move or they have to hold a position longer. I like to really acknowledge the whole class. I do love to tell individuals that they look good, but sometimes I feel when you point out that one person and say, hey, Amy, you look really good holding, that star pose, right? You look so beautiful holding that. What it sometimes does is it isolates others and they don't think that they're looking that good. So I really find for me personally, it feels better for me to compliment the whole class. Now, that's not to say that I won't walk over privately to someone and say how wonderful they're doing, especially if I know, they have told me, oh, my core is so weak. I need to get it better. And they, in this past, have struggled with planks or struggled with pike ups. And now all of a sudden, like one day it just bam, magically happens and they've got that plank and they've got that pike up. And of course I want to run over there and acknowledge it. So I'll either do it right then and there if I can walk over to them, or I will say after class, like, hey, I noticed you. I saw you with those planks today. I see that core getting stronger. I'll do something like that as well. And the same thing with correcting someone's form. I rarely will shout across the room, hey, Amy, bring those abs in. Hey, make sure, you're lifting that leg a little bit higher. Again, I just don't like that isolation. I may say to the class as a whole, make sure you're bringing your abs in, make sure you're not lifting your leg higher than your hip level, anything like that. Just, yes, I may not be talking about everybody and I may be trying to direct it to one person, but I also think that too, something like that, bringing your abs in and lifting your leg up, not higher than your hip level, anybody can benefit from that little reminder. Now, I will, if somebody is about to fall because they're not bringing their core in and they're wobbling all around, I will quickly say, hey, Amy, bring those abs in. It'll help you be more stable, especially if I feel that they are about to fall or they're about to hurt themselves. Safety is a huge importance for me, so I really want to make sure that they're feeling safe and that they are not about to fall. And if it happens to be that I have to yell that out across the room because I can't get to them fast enough, then so be it. I'd rather have that happen where I have to say something across the room than have them fall and hurt themselves. But other than that, that's really the only time I'll shout their name out attached to either a negative comment or not really a negative comment, but correct their form. I would like to believe that I would never say anything negative about somebody's style or their form. If I do, it's definitely not a conscious decision that I've made. I did have a teacher when I was practicing Pilates, and it was her style. She just really would say kind of nasty things to people and really intimidate people. And I just didn't feel like it was a place of respect. And I feel we're all adults here and people are paying a lot of money to come to my classes. And I definitely want to treat people with that respect and not treat people with any kind of humiliation or negative treatment because, again, it's Pilates and Pilates is a happy place. So let's make it a happy place. So that's really my teaching style, more casual, more welcoming, more positive. And if we switch to what I think Pilates sets apart from other forms of exercise, I really think that Pilates focuses, well, I shouldn't say I really think, I know that Pilates focuses more on the core and the strength. The focus really is not on losing weight and getting into that perfect body. Like I feel like some other forms of exercise that really is their focus is lose that weight. And that's great for them in that form of exercise. The goal is for you really to move in Pilates and find that powerhouse, which is in your core of your body. You want to develop it, and then the rest of it really falls into place. And your balance becomes better. Your flexibility improves. Your posture improves. Your strength improves. And if you happen to shed a few pounds and your body changes for the better, you know what? Then that is a plus too. And I think also Pilates is for any age. And where some other forms of exercise really aren't for all ages. I mean, I think everybody's body is different and everybody's body can handle things differently. But I'm talking on a whole. Like I used to take, when I was in my 30s and early 40s, I would say like I took HIIT classes all the time. I loved Tabata. I loved P90. I thought those were great. And at the time in my age group that I was in, it really, really worked for me. And then just one day, my feet started hurting more. I have horrible feet. They don't look horrible. I get plantar fasciitis all the time, and I have torn ligaments around my ankles, and just, people have bad hips, some people have bad backs. I got bad feet, and it was really just taking a toll on my feet. And then it started creeping up to my knees, and I knew that it was just taking me down a wrong path, where I feel like Pilates, it helps us at all ages. It just depends on where you want to go with it. Some people, they love those advanced moves and they love to look like human pretzels, and that's great for them. Some people love feet and straps and just want those hip openers. And really, let's be honest, who doesn't love feet and straps? I think there's 5% of the world that don't, but the rest of us, 95% of people, love feet and straps. But, feet and straps is more than just a love to do it. It opens up those hips. And as we get older, a lot of my clients, some of my clients are in their 70s and 80s, and they need that hip opener. And it's just such a relief for everybody. So I think that Pilates, again, is for all ages. It really focuses on the core and all that strength that comes with the core once it's developed. So Pilates is, to me, a really good option for everybody of all ages. I do think that there's some misconceptions about Pilates. So a lot of people, from what I've heard, especially when I talk to them, like, hey, have you done Pilates before? No, but I've done yoga and I know it's the same, and so I should be fine. And when people tell me that yoga and Pilates are the same, I visualize what I look like and what my face looks like, and I try to be conscious of my face, but I feel like I give them the deer in the headlights look, like, nope, it is not like yoga. But, that's a good answer, but it's not. And so, I've done yoga. I love yoga. This is nothing like shaming yoga, because, in fact, I'm trying to work on getting my yoga certificate as well. So definitely not shaming yoga. I think it's great, but they're different, especially reformer Pilates. Mat Pilates and yoga might be maybe a little bit similar. They both use a mat. They both lie down a lot on your back, but that's about it. But reformer yoga, see, now I'm getting confused. Reformer Pilates is, it's completely different, especially if you throw in contemporary reformer yoga. Oh my gosh, look at, now I'm talking about yoga. Reformer Pilates. Wow, got the yoga on the brain. But they definitely are different. Yoga uses the breath to relax the muscles and hold the poses. Pilates uses the breath to move into that pose and engage those muscles. They both, yoga and Pilates, both involve stretching, but I think there's a lot more stretching. Pilates is not really about stretching. A lot of people also will say to me, oh yeah, I could do Pilates. I stretch every day. Great that you stretch every day. I love that you stretch every day. I love that for you. I wish I was better at stretching every day, but it's not stretching. We definitely stretch, because most form of exercise definitely have some stretching involved, but it's not stretching. It's definitely getting into those poses that's going to open up joints, your shoulder joints. It's going to open up your hip joints. It's going to, work those muscles and that maybe you forgot that you had, especially deep into the core, deep into those legs. It's going to do a lot more than just stretching. If you've not taken a class, take one and find out how deep it gets, but then also take one and find out how well your body is going to feel as well. So let's move on to the levels of students and how I handle it. Let's first talk about the levels. We've got your first timers, which I love the first timers. I love for them to be in my class, because I love to be the one to introduce this wonderful form of fitness to someone. And I love to see when they get off of it, what their reaction is. Some of it are like, oh, that was amazing. I love it. And some of them are like, I'm out of here. I can't stand this. I'm never doing it again. And you get what you get. So those are your first timers. That's your first level. Second level is your beginners. Someone who, has some experience with Pilates in the past. Maybe they've done mat Pilates for a while and have taken a few classes on the reformer. Maybe they've taken just reformer classes and they've been doing it for a short period of time. Or, sometimes people stay at that beginner level forever, and that is just fine. Again, it's their body, their workout, whatever they want to do. Some people advance to intermediate, and those are the students that have taken reformer classes or privates for a while, and really, again, there's no set number on if you've taken 50 classes, now you're an intermediate student. That's just not true. You really have to learn to discover where your core is and how to use your core to help you get into a pose correctly, how to use your core to hold that pose, how to use your core and your breath to help with that balance. And they've also, like I said, discovered the power of their breath and how to use it to get in and out of those poses. And last, again, you also have that sense of balance to maintain themselves while standing on a carriage, or maybe you're on a box on the carriage. You've got to use your core, your breath, and that balance. So that really kind of, once you've got that, I would say you're more in that intermediate level. And there are those advanced students that have done everything the intermediate students can do, but they've mastered it. And they need very little cues to get in and out of a pose. They may crave those advanced moves like long spine, arabesque, and many others. And they want to see the limits of where their body can go. And also most of their limits, most of them know their limits of their bodies, what goes well with it, and won't attempt anything that will harm them because maybe they have a bad knee or they've got a bad shoulder, and they know that about themselves, and they just won't go there with that pose, or they'll do more of a beginner position of that pose. And you don't even need to tell them that. They just do it automatically. And so really too, if you've seen some really advanced students, I'm in total awe of them as how gracefully they move their body from one pose to another. I feel like I'm maybe in that early stages of advancement. I don't have that gracefulness that some of these people just have. And I always ask them, do you have a dancing background? Some say yes, and that you understand that gracefulness, and some say no. And I'm just like, wow, you're just so wonderful to watch. And so it's just amazement. So those are the levels, I would say: first timers, beginners, intermediates, and advanced. And as a Pilates teacher, you may end up having all four of those students in one class, and it's tough to manage. And one of my mentors, Jess, who taught me how to layer on. And I spoke with Jess in episode 2 of my podcast. So just a little plug here. If you haven't listened to that yet, it's episode 2 on the Traveling Pilates Teacher podcast. Please listen to it. She gets a great conversation. She's got such great insight on teaching. She truly is just one of my mentors, and I really look up to her, not only as a teacher, but also as to a human being. She's wonderful. So listen to that podcast. But she started telling me, and she's told me, and I kind of stole it from her, but I think she's okay with it, is, she starts with that beginner pose and always saying, she layers on from that beginner pose. And so I do the same thing. I start with that beginner pose, and I like to say, if you're good here, stay here. If you want more, then this layer is for you. And some will try it. Actually, most will try it, and if it works for them, fantastic. Then they move on. If it doesn't work for them, then I kind of say, yeah, it worked, or hey, you might want to go back, or they'll just go back a lot of times too, to that one step below. And I may layer on 3 or 4 times. Sometimes it's just one, but if I've got some really advanced students in the class, I do need to make those layers 3 or 4 times. And I also do with the spring choices. I will say, if you feel strong today, these are your spring choices. If you're feeling a little bit tired, or maybe you've got pain in your shoulder or your arms, if we're doing arm work, I'll say then use these springs. So you can layer on the poses, and then you can also use the spring choices. And 2, I just ran to reiterate, using heavier springs isn't always the advancement. A lot of times using lighter springs is the advancement. And I know we have a hard time wrapping our head around that, because I think our minds are conditioned to more is better. And in this case, less sometimes is better. So just to kind of think about that as well. So yeah, so that's what I do when I've got those 4 people in the classroom. I find that most people, I also do one more thing, is I will pair a first timer or maybe a second timer with an advanced student. I'll say, why don't you come sit by Megan? Megan, she's pretty advanced, and just watch her. Because if you've got 10, 12 people in a room, obviously you can't be watching every single person, every single moment. And so if I'm working with another student or trying to correct that other student, and you as a new timer really aren't getting it, just watch that that advanced student. Most advanced students love to share their craft with other people. Most of them are more than helpful versus condescending and cocky, I guess is the best word. So it's really nice to pair those as well. And that's, that's how I tackle various levels in one class. So with any period of time that you teach anything, you always have success stories, and I have many success stories, but one that I am really recently saw, and it's on my mind at the forefront, is I have a student that has come. She started, so I'm in Morocco. I'm talking to you from Morocco, which is a whole nother topic and a whole nother podcast, but I'm in Morocco teaching, and I've been here for 4 months, and I'll be here for 5 months total. But this new student came to me in my second month of teaching here, and no Pilates experience at all. Didn't do any form of workout, and her words, not mine. She was overweight, and she was having a little bit of an issue with her core strength. I would say little to no core strength. She told me that she drank 3 to 4 Coca-Colas every day, really was eating poorly, had a high pressure job that was not allowing her to focus on herself and instead focusing on work. She went to the doctor because she was having some pains, and the doctor told her she was borderline diabetic, and that really scared her. And he suggested, dietary changes as well as finding a form of exercise. She despised going to the gym. She didn't want to go to a place where she felt uncomfortable. So she tried Pilates, and she was hooked. And I'm welling up with a little bit of tears because I just adore this woman as well. She's just a special human being too. But she comes to the studio 2 to 3 times a week. And one day I looked at her and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm seeing a completely different person. And I was so happy for her. These are tears of joy. Sorry, I'm getting a little emotional, but I just could see it in her face. She was just so happy. And I saw this happiness because she was able to, for the first time, do a pike up. She'd been trying and trying for months, and she got it. And I said to her, oh my gosh, I'm so proud of you. I'm going to cry. And we kind of had a moment where we were a little both teary-eyed, but we got over that really quickly because we had to get to something else. And I had obviously a room full of other people, but oh my gosh, she is doing so well right now. She's, loving Pilates. Her body obviously has transformed as well, and she's lost weight, which that's great too. That's a plus, but it's the health that she's really gotten, and her body is moving, and she's just doing really, really well. And I'm just so proud of her, and she's proud of herself, and she's feeling better about herself, and she's glowing now, and she's just doing really well. So I love to see these transformations right before my eyes. So yeah, so sorry, getting a little emotional, but I'm moving on from that emotion because I'm going to talk a little bit about the challenges now. And that's brings a different emotion, but not teary-eyed emotion. But I would really say there's a lot of challenges being, a teacher, when you're in a room with, 10 to 12 different people, or maybe you have 5, however many people, you're in charge of their safety basically. And you've got them for an hour. You've got to, you've got to get them a lesson. You've got to get their bodies moving. You've got to, really entertain, I guess, too, as well for that hour. But really the biggest challenge for me is none of those. The biggest challenge for me is when people don't listen, because a big part of Pilates is listening to the cues and the teacher to move your body correctly and, more importantly, safely. So when I have 1 or 2 people that just are not listening, it does become frustrating because I don't want them to get hurt. Now if you're doing lowering and lifting of the legs while we have feet and straps versus going into frogs, when I tell you, when I say, okay, let's go into frogs now, to me, not a big deal. That doesn't bother me at all. I may walk over if I see you keep doing it and say, hey, are your hips sore today? And if that is, we can maybe change the move. But 9 out of 10 times, it's like they didn't realize that we moved on. And, sometimes you drift off into la la land, and that's okay, especially during feet and straps, and that's okay. But sometimes, when we're standing on the carriage, or we're kneeling on the carriage, or we have a box on the carriage and we're moving that carriage, people really need to focus, and they really need to listen, because in those scenarios, they can get really hurt. And to me, that's a challenge when they're not focusing and they're not listening. So I usually, if I know someone's not listening, or I know they're a bad listener to begin with, and they kind of a lot of times will always admit it, or if they're one that likes to talk to their neighbors throughout the whole class, I'll kind of walk over to their carriage and I'll just teach from that point. Like, I don't say anything to them. I don't look at them. I just kind of keep teaching, but right by their station or their carriage. And usually that can redirect their focus. And to me, it's like that old teacher habit. When students are talking in class, as a teacher, I would walk over and just kind of teach from there. So I guess old habits are hard to break. So switching gears completely, let's talk about some of the mistakes that I think Pilates teachers make. And this is just from my point of view. I think the first one is teachers compare themselves to other teachers, especially if you see other teachers that their classes are always booked and they've got long wait lists. I think you start to compare yourself to them. And I think it's just human nature. We do that. But just try to remember that, make it your own. It's better to be you and more natural. And I also think that people worry about the attendance of their classes. And I think if you have consistently low attendance, then you do need to take a step back and you need to figure out why. But if you have a low attendance for, say, a week or maybe like a couple days in a row, just stop and think like, oh, yeah, you're right, it's a holiday week. Or, oh, the weather's bad. When the weather's bad, people don't like to go outside. They like to go to work and go straight home and stay in home and get in their jammies and relax. They don't want to go back out. Or if on the opposite, if it's beautiful weather outside, they like to go outside. Maybe they like to go for a bike ride or for a run or for a walk. And so people get, people have different reasons. And some people get stuck at work or have family commitments. And there's so many reasons. So just don't take it personally, because 9 out of 10 times the reason people don't show, it's not because of you. And I also find too that students love change, and you don't want to repeat the same flow over and over again. I did have a teacher who would always do the same things all the time. And we as a class, especially us regulars, we would just know what to do next. And we could just kind of drift off into that la la land and really just do the whole thing. And, we all complained about it, but it was the time of day of the class that it was perfect for us. And so we all suffered through it. So my advice would be just stay fresh with your classes. It's okay to repeat classes. I mean, obviously we do repeat them, especially the ones that were really good, and walk out of there and go, yes, that was a good session. Repeat it, but just don't repeat it over and over again, or space out the repeat a little bit. And I do think that the mistakes and my advice for new teachers are very similar. But if I would add one thing for the advice, it would be to take classes as a student as well. You do learn from others, even if it's an instructor that you're not 100% crazy about, you can learn something from them. Maybe it's just a different way to cue a move. Maybe it's how to layer on to that position that you were kind of struggling with. Whatever it is, you're going to learn something, and you're going to get a workout. So why not? And everybody knows Pilates teachers, it's hard for us to work out. So if you can get in there, even 3 times a week, it's just great. Your body will thank you, because you're doing a lot for others, and you deserve to do that for yourself as well. So to wrap this up today, I want to talk just a little bit more about the why I do love teaching Pilates. I love to empower people, especially women. I love empowering women. I love to empower all people, but really women too. When you feel good about your body and your mindset, that's power. And if I can help in giving you that power, then that makes me happy. And again, Pilates, it's a happy place. People either come happy, or if they're not happy or they've had a bad day, then they quickly get happy. And who doesn't want to work in that happy place, right? So that's part of my why. I've given you my why throughout this whole podcast, but that's just the last end of that why and why I do it. Pilates has it's changed my life. It's changed many people's lives, and if I can share it with others, why not? I love it. So I hope you've enjoyed hearing my thoughts on Pilates. I've taken my Pilates teaching to a new level and have become a traveling Pilates teacher, hence the name of the podcast, traveling the world while teaching Pilates. I do hope you tune into that episode where we'll learn how that all transpired and any tips I have on how you can become a traveling Pilates teacher yourself. And so I thank everyone for listening to this episode of The Traveling Pilates Teacher, and bye for now.